Welcome to this special episode of Buck Builders. We know everything's bigger in Texas, especially the white-tailed deers. Unless you're in Peru, Indiana, welcome to the X Factor. Welcome back, Buck Builders. Let's go inside and check out Bellar's place where all the magic happens. All right, Buck Builders, we're going to talk about the most important thing about raising white-tailed deer, genetics. Genetics is the whole key to getting the biggest deer in the world. This right here is High Roller. High Roller was one of the first and biggest white-tailed deer ever raised in the United States of America. But I'm going to tell you the most important and most special thing about High Roller. His lineage that he left behind. I'm going to show you a buck here. Gold Dust. This is a grandson of High Roller. This is X Factor, another grandson of High Rollers. This is one of the biggest white-tailed deer in the United States of America. I mean, I'm holding his rack right now and I guarantee you it weighs 30 pounds. Can you imagine being a white-tailed deer trying to run through the woods with 30 pounds hanging off your head? This deer has all the characteristics of a prehistoric white-tailed deer. So as we're talking about genetics, I want you to know one thing about Mr. Bellar. That man doesn't only raise white-tailed deer, he was one of the best coon dog raisers in the whole United States of America. Won many world titles, had many championships to go with it. So they actually go hand in hand. If you're raising a dog, if you're raising a horse, if you're raising a white-tailed deer, it's all the same. It comes down to genetics. You gotta have the best genetics in the world to be one of the best buck builders in the world. We'll be right back in a minute. Welcome back, Buck Builders. Today we're with Russ Bellar, one of the greatest whitetail breeders in the United States of America. He's been raising whitetail deer for over 25 years. Not only has he been raising whitetail deer, he's also been raising some of the best coon dogs, and he's been doing that for over 60 years. Mr. Russ, what do you think about the whitetail industry, and what do you think about them coon dogs?
Well, a lot of coon dogs is a lot of fun. No money to be ever made in it. I won about, I believe, $4 million, but it cost me $6.5 million to win the 4. So there's not very much money out there to be made in a coon dog. A Striker he was my favorite dog of all time. I won 2 world hunts with him, and he was such an outlaw. It was unreal. He'd run a deer for about 10 minutes and maybe catch it, then tree a raccoon off of it, and all the hunters hated him because their dogs would go on chasing the deer, and he'd stop and tree a coon.
It's kind of like it was a little bit of trickery there.
Oh, it was. He was just a pure outlaw, but I love that hound. This year we're having a world coon hunt here as we speak in Peru, Indiana, and I told him I wouldn't even participate in it because it was our club, and I just hold all my dogs back and let somebody else win it this year.
I got goosebumps right now just thinking about your white-tailed deer. I mean, I've got to be here for the last few days and experience these deer. I've also met you years ago at the TDA convention down there in Texas. And right off the back, I saw your horns there when I come around the booth, and I was like, my goodness, what kind of deer is that? I've never seen a deer that big. I just want to know, basically, did the coon dogs, raising the coon dogs, did that bring you right into raising the white-tailed deer and give you basically a good starting foundation to know how to take care of those animals, and I guess genetics too?
Well, there's 3 things raising any kind of animal, I think, especially a white-tailed deer. Number 1 is the genetics. Number 2 is stress. And what I mean stress, flies, gnats, mosquitoes. We fog here every day. It's hard to even find a fly on our property, let alone a mosquito. You never been bit mosquito here in years because we fog every day for those mosquitoes. And the feed. The feed is very, very important. The same as the genetics and the stress.
You know, yesterday I think we went over and we were looking at some of the products you do, and I tell you, I've been to a lot of white-tailed deer breeders. I've been to a lot of different ranches, and I have noticed here you do things outside of the box more than most people. I mean, you basically make your own feed, you mill your own feed, you have all kinds of different minerals and supplements that you put in there that makes those deers healthier.
You know, I got lucky this year. I found a mineral that comes out of the ocean, and guy sent it to me, and He told me about raising a big pumpkin. I know what has a pumpkin got to do with raising a deer, but he raised a 1,300-pound pumpkin. And I thought, well, let me try it. And I started feeding him that mineral, had no idea. It had a little bit of salt taste to it, and the deer just loved it. I called the guy in Florida to order me some more of that, and he asked me if my deer are any tamer. I thought, holy cow, I thought I was doing something to do it, and it was all in that mineral. Yeah, that mineral is something else. It's got 93 minerals in it, and they mine it out of the ocean, and how they do it, I don't know. I'd like to go down there and see how I do it, but I know one thing, I'm gonna keep feeding it.
All right, buck builders, every buck builder's different. Now, I told you Mr. Russ Bellar, he does things in a total different form than most people do. I want you to check out what he's doing. Not only is he taking a natural product, he's taking a byproduct out of a fuel that they make, and he's feeding it to them white-tailed deer. Take a look at this.
Howdy.
How are you doing,
I'm
Mr.
all
Boyer?
right.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Guys, I want to introduce y'all to Mr. John Boyer. This man's going to teach you a little bit about oil, and he's also going to teach you a lot about the nutritional value of the byproduct that he has that Mr. Russ Bellar's using on his white-tailed deer.
He was looking for some protein to feed his deer that had some oil content to it, and it was pretty high in fat. We've been using this feed for quite some time in our livestock, in cattle and hogs, and so this oil is pretty high in fat. He's having some great success with his deer feeding this stuff. I'm going to come this way. We'll start with the presses. This is winter canola. We grew it here in central Indiana. This is a real good protein source for livestock. This is a food grade oil plant here. We're going to make cooking oil out of this. This is going to be for salad oil and light cooking, and also fry oil.
Thank you, Mr. John, for the knowledge that we just learned, and we'll be right back in a minute with buck builders. All right, buck builders, you know, at my ranch, we don't house but about 120, 130 head of deer. This is the most elaborate operation I've ever been to. I want you to understand that these deer here, unbelievable deer, great genetics, great bloodlines, but the animal husbandry. You look at how much care and heart and time goes into these animals, you'll realize what it takes to be a buck builder.
Through the alleyway here, they make this turn, they go through these guillotine gates, and after they're in there, we shut the guillotine down behind them.
All right, buck builders, we've shown you how these deer, they come through the alleyway system. Every pen on this ranch, which we know there's over 40 of them, they feed right through here. They come up that alleyway. They'll come through the facility here. All this is outside, but once we get inside the facility, everything's indoor.
We can put him in this chute and cut his horns off before he goes on in.
All right, guys, we've shown you the outside of the facility. This is how these deer come in. Welcome to the belly of the beast. As the ramps start to come up, we're gonna hit scales, then we're gonna hit the chute, the working chute, whether we're AIing, whether we're collecting semen, whatever we're doing with those deer.
This is where they come into the chute right here. This is where all the magic happens.
Well, this here is what you call a cedar. This is what brings them in heat in 14 days. And this here's the gun. We're gonna wash this here with the, kill all germs on it. Then we're gonna stick this cedar in here. This cedar will open up inside of her when we get it in her. And we squeeze that in and go in. Tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. We got to stick this in. She will be in heat in 14 days. We're putting one of our state tags in. We'd like to give her a shot to keep from getting probiotics in her.
You never quit searching for something that's gonna make your deer herd better or your dogs.
You can't just quit. I mean, you gotta just work at it every day. There ain't a day goes by, especially with the deer. I'm spending way more time with the deer than I do the dogs now. I've let off the dogs for the last couple of years, but I got a few years left. I'll get back and win another world champion. Love to hit that 600 inch. 580 is the biggest deer we raised on the farm. I think he might score more this year. Got to get him scored and see what he scores. But I know his horns is a lot heavier, and he looks good.
Now, didn't X Factor, he has a brother that went over.
Yeah, he's got a brother that went 655, 655 inches. I mean, that's
the biggest whitetail deer ever.
ever. Yeah, he's the biggest whitetail deer in the world. I was lucky. I got some semen off of him yesterday. I'm going to breed 5 does to him. I'm going to come back on X Factor does over him, try to hit a 700.
All right, buck builders, we want to thank you for tuning in today. You got to talk to one of the best buck builders in the United States of America, and we're going to help you build your bucks.